Today's episode is brought to you by the Vegas Bear Guys and 2T Fitness.
Everything sequel contains explicit language. And why the fudge not, you melon farmer?
Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel Podcast. This is the Poltergeist edition. Today we're talking Poltergeist III. Michael Shantz here of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, your friend and mine, the man we all know and love, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hi, Tom.
That's a lot of crap that doesn't mean anything. Dr. Seaton is not just the villain of this piece, he's also the audience's mouthpiece.
Right. Oh, that's fantastic. Well,
I was kind of reflecting on, you asked Mike in the last episode, what are the rules?
Right.
But I'm going to go even further and say, what's the explanation? Because in both these movies, we get a scene of bullshit explanation like I've never seen, to the point where the characters in the scene are going, I don't know what you're talking about. None of this makes sense.
Right, and the other thing about these two movies is that you don't get that explanation until there's 20 minutes left in the movie.
And it's done on the fly.
Yeah.
With lots
it's like
of people
talking
saying,
out the side of their mouth.
We don't have time for this. We don't have time.
Yeah, exactly. It's a quick aside. All right. Well, joining us, of course, once again, Matthew Aldrich, screenwriter from Hollywood and co-writer of Coco. Thank you so much for joining us again. Hello, Matt.
Hello, guys. Yeah, this is. I'm just reflecting back on the last time I was here, and we did a couple of gems, and this Poltergeist 3, I would put in the pile with. With it's not as bad as Halloween 3, but it is. It is pretty bad. It's definitely as bad as Airplane 2.
Matt's still got an axe to grind against Halloween 3.
Yeah, for anybody listening at home who's been monitoring the Halloween 3 wars,
also known as our show.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone has talked more about Halloween 3 than we have on this show.
I don't think so. But anyway, if you want to revisit the Halloween 3 wars, listen to the 1982 project, because we discuss Halloween 3
once again.
Once again, yeah. Poor Mike. I feel like Mike is like the child, and we're like the couple getting a divorce. Tom,
yeah.
You and me, and we're really making him choose who he wants to live with. I make my case against Halloween 3 pretty vehemently in our episode on the horror films of 1982. So,
yeah, the only question there is which one of us is Dr. Daniel Chalice in the divorce proceedings, because that makes a pretty clear cut about who's right and who's wrong.
Who should get custody? Well, it was funny because as you were talking in the last show about Taylor working the long con,
yeah,
and being actually just being a car thief, yes. who dupes people, with his Native American mysticism.
Right, he tells them their car is angry, and
until they can just hand them over his car. Right. That actually, when you said that, Tom, the reframing Taylor like that just made him make so much sense to me. you know? And
Yeah,
I was like, oh my God.
It
But
gives
in the
him
same
way more
way,
of a through line than he actually has in the movie. But
Yes,
completely
you're right.
gives them a reason, gives them stakes, gives them a timetable, gives them everything. It's all part of this con. And so on the last viewing of Halloween 3 that I did for the other show, I looked at it as not Daniel Chalice was trying to solve a murder. Because that was my upon first viewing, I was like, well, this guy's trying to solve a murder. He has no reason to. There was just no reason for him to be in the movie. But when I reframed it as, no, he's just trying to have sex with this 18-year-old girl.
yeah,
Right.
Everything definitely made more sense.
completely, yeah.
Yeah, that he had no interest in solving that murder. So tip of the hat. There is something to my feelings toward Halloween 3 have evolved, but they still remain pretty fixed.
I at least made you admit that it was a funner movie than Cat People.
Yes, yeah, and it is. It is more fun to watch than Cat People, marginally, because Cat People is maybe the least fun movie to watch
Ever.
Period. Yeah, like yeah. Anyway, we digress.
Well, yes, of course, today we're talking Poltergeist 3, a 1988 film. This movie is directed by Gary Sherman, so all three movies have different directors. He directed Dead and Buried, if you remember that, and Wanted Dead or Alive, a Rutger Hauer vehicle. That's about it.
I think he'd be at home with a Rutger Hauer vehicle. I can imagine,
Yeah.
like he could be surrounded by that late 80s-ness. Yeah, I think he's very good at that sort of aesthetic.
Yeah. Well, and I talked in the last episode about the law of diminishing returns. I think Poltergeist 2 was at 20% on Rotten Tomatoes. This one's at 17%. They lowered the budget, $10.5 million. Opening weekend of 4.3, but in the USA and the world, 14.1 million. So America said, we're done with Poltergeist, I think.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it's so funny too, again, because even though there are these diminishing financial returns, this continues to be kind of a legacy title that gets rebooted and reimagined and repackaged,
Right.
again and again and again. And really, it's off of the first movie. Nobody's trying to repackage.
Well,
the
I was
magic
just
of
going to say,
Poltergeist
right,
3.
yeah.
You know, nobody's trying to capture that lightning in a bottle, but
They're trying to cash in on Poltergeist, but not continue the story
no, exactly
from these sequels.
And to me, it's just so funny because every time they have tried to sequel, reboot, or reimagine Poltergeist, it has failed. Like it has failed critically and financially. Yet they're still trying to do it, and I really keep asking myself why. What is so special about that first movie? What is so marketable or known about that first movie that makes this such a persistent title? Like, why hasn't this gone the way of 1,000 other marginally okay horror films from the 80s?
Right. You know what I also thought of during our last episode that I didn't speak to was the Steven Spielberg of it all, because one of his biggest regrets was, Jaws was this huge hit, and then he had nothing to do with the sequels. And so there's a rather well-known story that he didn't like that Jaws was, sequelized in ways in which he had nothing to do with it, which is why he wanted to be involved in a second Jurassic Park. And that's why he did The Lost World, so that he could kind of have control over that sequel. But it's interesting to me that he learned that lesson with Jaws, and then Poltergeist comes along. He had no interest.
Yeah.
So it's not like that was on his mind for this franchise.
For as much as Steven Spielberg's record speaks for itself, but I don't think he has a very good track record with sequels in general. I don't know if he knows how to do sequels.
I think you're right. Yeah, because The Lost World, it's not a good movie.
And the Indiana Jones franchise as well.
Right.
I think those sequels don't deliver on the promise of the on the promise.
I
of the
think
premise,
those sequels
right?
are appreciated way more than they should be.
Shots fired. Yeah. You know, and so and also, you know, at the time, as we've talked about,
It
Mike,
looks
like
like
at
a
the
gauntlet
time,
has been laid down there for a future
sequels
series.
were not
Yeah.
they were not cachet. Like they were something someone stooped to do.
Right.
In the feature world, it wasn't a given that something would be a
Well, and
franchise, and
Tom and
that
I,
you would.
you and I have talked about that with especially the Planet of the Apes series. You know, they really
Yeah.
Charlton Heston had some serious demands in order to come back because it was being in a sequel was just something you didn't do back then. Yeah. Mhm.
If you're a movie star, right? It was definitely seen as slumming it, which is ironic given the quality of those movies, and better than some of his other 70s movies that Charlton Heston was in. In fact,
Yeah. Right.
I mean, since we're talking about alternate universes where Spielberg does the sequel, I mean, it'd be interesting to see where Toby Hooper would have gone if he'd have been allowed to, if he'd been let loose on a Poltergeist sequel, because, famously with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, he didn't want to repeat anything from the original movie. He wanted to make a straight slapstick comedy, and he had Cannon behind him, who I'm not going to turn you down whatever you want to do. Basically, right? That there's no quality control there. So yeah, sure, go ahead. So it would have been that also would have been interested, and maybe he
That's
could
an
have put his
excellent
stamp
point.
on
I would
on the
love to have
franchise in
seen
a way
that.
that
Yeah.
he wasn't
I would love
allowed
to see
to,
that. And speaking of
kind
continuity, by the
agreed not to with the
as
first movie.
as I was saying in the last episode, you know, nobody came back on the production
Yeah.
side of things. Even though they got the band back together on the cast, on the production side of things, nobody came back for the sequel of Poltergeist except for the two writers. And now by the third movie, we have yet another complete changing of the guard
Right.
behind the camera. New director, new producers, new writers. And I'd have to double check. I mean, I know it's a new cinematographer. I'd have to double check to see if it was a new editor. But
Well, and of course,
between
only
those,
two actors come back.
well, but I'm just saying, like, if you want to talk about the creative core of a film, you're talking about the director, the writer, the producer,
Yeah.
the DP, and the editor. Like, those five people are going to really drive all creative decisions that are made
Yeah.
behind the camera. And so I think that's also, in some ways, that makes this series really interesting to me, because we don't see a lot of that anymore. Producers, if they make a hit, they are producing the second and third and fourth and fifth.
Yeah, right.
There is a continuity, a creative continuity behind the camera, even as they swap out directors and things like that. The producers and often the
that's true.
writers take on this role of essentially show running
Shepherding,
a
yeah.
franchise. And so I find it remarkable that there was a time in the 80s when a title would just be this like jump ball that anybody could grab, and the first film, it's like it was Steven Spielberg and Kennedy Marshall. It was like it
Right.
was it was such a storied, or would
Yeah.
be that was such a it would become such a storied partnership among those three people, and the kinds of movies that they would go on to produce, and the fact that they had this giant hit and then just like, I don't know,
Left.
like left it by the side of the road and
Yeah.
drove on. Like it would never happen today. It would never ever happen today. And maybe this is why, because when there's no continuity,
Yeah.
a new creative team comes on, and they maybe they don't know the potholes to watch out for. Maybe they don't they haven't been through it, so they don't understand why something was maybe successful, or what the heart of something
Right.
was. Maybe they have a misread of the film, and that's what I feel like for this particular movie. For me, like, this particular movie looked at the first two movies and picked all the wrong things to photocopy.
Yeah, right.
You know.
Yeah, and I think it's more common that what happens specifically to horror series in the 70s and 80s is that they have a sequel that doesn't work and goes in a direction that is unsustainable, and then there's an attempt to sort of regroup, try and re-involve some of the people who were in the original movie. That happens with the Nightmare series and Dream Warriors, where they try and get Wes Craven back on board. The Exorcist with getting getting William Peter Blatty in to do the third movie after the debacle of the second. So, but there's no redemption arc for
there's no reset. There's no reset here.
There's no redemption arc here. It's just I mean, what's interesting is they are really they are really focused from the outset of this movie on doing something completely different.
But it makes it feel nothing like a Poltergeist movie.
From the last two movies. Like, clearly that is the goal here.
Maybe, but I can't get I can't get myself loose of this feeling that watching this movie is like
but I mean, some of that I think
ship,
is positive.
You know?
I think some of that is
it's just
some of
like
those
this
moves
thing
are
that's
positive.
adrift in the sea and nobody's piloting it, and it once sailed mightily, but now it's just all the rats have jumped and there's nobody left. There's nobody left in this story. There's nobody left except for, I mean, really just the stockiest of stock characters. You brought up Dr. Seaton. Like, Dr. Seaton, he's not the worst film doctor I've ever seen. but he is a terrible doctor and exists only to be kind of the doubting Thomas in the room,
Yeah, right.
but not even done well or played for comedy the way that I forget the character's name, but from the Jurassic Park movie, the accountant, the lawyer, the guy who gets eaten on the toilet. He's at least played as the butt of jokes. Seaton is I don't know. This Dr. Seaton's got to go.
Right.
I was glad when he died.
Well, and I it was funny too, because there's that moment where you think Tom Skerritt and Nancy Allen, there's like some sort of chicanery where you think we went back before the moment that the doctor died, and I remember thinking, oh no, he's not going to be alive now, is he? But then they get out of the elevator and he's still dead, and I was actually relieved.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking to both those points, there's the second half of these movies of this movie there's a lot of discontinuity. Some of it is built into the supernatural premise, and some of it I'm pretty sure are just full on mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some real, I mean, they're definitely building on this idea that there's some kind of time displacement going on, but there's also an unintentional time displacement. You see people in scenes where they couldn't possibly be.
I didn't pick up on any of that, actually, that there was time displacement.
Well, there's a pretty egregious one which I can't find any verification of, where when Donna is supposedly on the other side for, I don't know what it is, like the 20 minutes of the movie that she's in the in the animated prayer card from the last movie. She appears in some of the kitchen scenes. She's just standing there. And there's no one else it can be. There's no other character it can be. So, like, it just seems to me that the second half of this movie in particular is out of is kind of out of the hands of even the director and the editors. that they've kind of lost.
Yeah, but that kind of tracks
what is
because they
actually happening in
refilmed the
movie.
last
And
ending to try to make it. The funny part is there's two things.
Right.
One, the first cut of this movie was 80 minutes long, and they said add some shit. So they added stuff
Perfect.
to pad it.
Oh.
And
Who
then
said
the
add
other
some
part
shit?
was
80 minutes.
the other part was
80 minutes is
You
perfect.
usually have the opposite where they have to cut stuff out to make it R. This movie was rated PG, and they wanted to add some stuff so that it could be PG-13.
Oh my god. What did they? Do you know what they added? Like what?
I don't know specifically.
Yeah.
It didn't say. Yeah.
Was it a 10-minute sequence of a crane rising?
Yeah. Right.
Whenever I hear about
Maybe it was Laura Flynn Boyle crawling out of a body.
Whenever I hear about
crawling out of
yeah, that
Tangina.
was an unpleasant surprise. Whenever I hear about a movie that needs to reshoot its ending, like it doesn't fill me with the most confidence. You know.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Like
I mean, I think they should have gone as far as just recutting the movie to take Heather O'Rourke out of it,
the whole thing,
and then creating a new movie because
Right.
it reads as so distasteful, given that she died when the movie was being made. I mean, to have to keep I can't imagine being the premiere, having known Heather, known and worked with Heather O'Rourke, and having to see her turn into a demon every 10 minutes in this movie. It's like, okay, this girl just died, and there she is being
Right.
attacked. It's like, who?
Yeah.
I'm sure the director made some shitty choices on this movie, but his proposed idea of scrapping it completely, I think, is probably the best choice he made.
Yeah,
during filming.
I mean, I can't even imagine. The conundrum that would put everybody
Right.
in after you've
Yeah.
shot this movie, or 99% of it, and you're in for all of these millions of dollars, and it's this thing, and blah blah blah, and is the would the insurer pay anything if you decided to cancel this movie because of bad PR?
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of movies where people have died in the making of the movie, and the movie still comes out. And I think for better or for worse, it's not a matter of taste. It's sometimes just a matter of one's, dollars and cents, and I can imagine just sort of the heavy heart that the director had, and I honestly feel for him, and not only about her death sort of in the latter days of the filming of this movie, but like my understanding is she was the treatment for whatever she was
misdiagnosed, and she was getting
the wrong treatment, and it caused some puffiness in her face and cheeks, which is
swelling,
which is really obvious in the filming of it, and
Yeah.
it's like you sort of see a child in the throes of an illness in this film, in a way that is, again, it's this meta quality. If you know the story behind it, you're looking at this film in a much, much different light, and it's harder to watch. And
Right. Well, and she finally looks different too. I mean, from 82 to 86, when you see the Poltergeist 2, The Other Side, I found it remarkable how similar she looked to how she did 4 years previous.
Yeah, they did a really good. I guess she hadn't aged.
That's a long time for a
It
kid.
is, but I mean, how they shoot her and her hair and all of that stuff, and that she just she hadn't matured very much. In that time, her face hadn't changed.
But in this movie, you can tell that she's older.
Yeah, she's getting
now.
older, and rather than, here's the thing about this movie too, and it's a lot of movies, especially sequels, and you guys would know about this. When you have a kid at the center of your sequel, you are playing with fire. Have to. The best example of this is Karate Kid, where if narratively you're
Right.
picking up within a year of where the last movie left off, but you're filming it 3 years later, like you are going to strain credibility really, really fast. And so if your sequels don't accommodate for the aging of their characters, it really shortchanges you, I think, because it really does kind of corral you into telling the same story again. But what they actually had the opportunity to show Carol Ann is a little older and facing different things at a different time in her life, and how might her relationship with her clairvoyance or with these spirits or with Cain or whatever, how might it change or develop given the fact that she is now a few years older? That seems to me more fertile ground creatively for the creators, rather than go like, okay, we're just going to pick it up and it's going to be like a month after the end of the last one. And we're just going to like...
We still got that red onesie jumper,
yeah, exactly.
Right?
Like we're still going to like dress her up like Annie and hope that she just looks like... that she still looks like the adorable little Carol Ann. It's just... It's funny, like, you know, in the Toy Story series... You know, it's animated, and they didn't have to worry about characters getting older. Right. But in that series, they let Andy age exactly the number of years he would have aged. And look at where that series was able to go by letting Andy grow up, you know?
Right.
And so some of these movies that try to keep their main characters, especially when they're young, the same age, I just feel like they're shooting themselves in the foot before they even start.
Interesting. Well, this is maybe a good place for us to take a break.
All right.
Let's take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll dive deeper into the narrative of Poltergeist 3.
There's a narrative?
Yeah, I was gonna say, sticky as it
There's
may
a
be.
building. I don't know if there's a narrative. There's a building.
Okay, well, so should we enter the building when we come back?
Let's enter the building and see if Tom Skerritt's involved. Right after this.
I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beer-stinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
And we're back, everyone. Matt and Tom and I are here discussing Poltergeist 3, the 1988 movie. Directed by Gary Sherman. All right. So, at the top of this movie, we have a location change, and we have the Imbas Tom of surrogates taking the place of our parents. So we have Tom Skerritt and Nancy Allen.
Yeah, and they kind of fake you out initially into believing that it's going to be Jo Beth Williams, I think. When Nancy Allen walks through the door, there's a moment where you're I think they're leading you to believe it's her before they reveal it's Nancy Allen.
I didn't pick up on that. That's interesting.
It is also part of a jump scare, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well,
some of the jump scares
that's what I have. I have a
strange
strange note of you have the shrieking jump scare music when she enters the room.
Right.
I was like, what the fuck are you doing, Poltergeist 3?
But she reacts as if it's her mother, and then we see, and then we have the conversation about Aunt Trish, don't call me that.
Yeah.
I think it's just it's that thing that sequels do where they want to ease you into the change of cast, but they're also giving you kind of like a parallel kind of actor. You know, someone who potentially could have been cast in the original role. And same with Tom Skerritt, I suppose. You know, you could foresee a Poltergeist where he's the dad.
Sure.
Totally.
I think that's kind of the point with these surrogates.
Absolutely.
And a new sister, a new Dominique Dunn, basically.
Right.
Yes, a young Lara
Very
Flynn
clear.
Boyle.
Yeah. First role.
who you know, in another weird coincidence, is called Donna, name of her character in
Twin Peaks, right. So, does this work for you? I mean, you said that you didn't think it was a bad thing, Tom.
You mean the well, I mean, it's. I don't think it's I don't mind these actors, and
Yeah.
I feel like if you're gonna, you know, if you need to switch it up, this is fine. But you know, I'm still I'm still gonna stick with my original idea that we don't need any legacy characters in this. So
Right.
we definitely don't need anyone related to legacy characters in it.
I mean, doesn't it beg the question, why the hell would the parents that we've known for 2 movies send away this daughter?
I found that to be the most. That was the red flag, or that was where I threw the yellow flag. I was like, no. I was like, Stephen and Diane would never ship Carol Ann away to her sister so that she could attend a school for the gifted and troubled, or whatever the hell they called that school. Like I blew the whistle at that point. I was like, they have to be dead in order for Carol Ann to be living,
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what
to
I
be
thought,
living
yeah.
away from them. I didn't find. I was.
I bet there's a draft of this script where that's the case.
I'm sure.
Because Nancy Allen reacts as if they're dead. When we first talk about them, I really thought that's where we were going.
Yeah, they when we learned, it was funny. Like I wrote a note at the beginning of this film. I as for as much as they wanted to ease me into the new location and the new cast, I felt myself completely discombobulated. You know, they after the first few scenes, I wrote, they just told me how Carol Ann is related to Tom Skerritt and Nancy Allen, but I still don't know. I know they're an aunt and uncle, but I don't know who is blood. I don't know if
See, me too. For the longest time, I thought Tom Skerritt was JoBeth Williams' brother. I thought that's what they were telling us at the beginning of the movie.
That's what I thought,
and then at
too.
the end of the movie, they're telling us it's Nancy Allen.
Right. And then I thought, maybe did I mishear it? Maybe Tom Skerritt is Craig T. Nelson's brother? So all I'm saying is, like, this movie tries to do the very simple thing of saying, here's who these new people are, and 2 out of the 3 people on this show still was confused by that very simple thing of, like, of just explaining who these people are.
Yeah.
And so it's like the idea to set this film in a skyscraper, the idea to transplant it to Chicago, to a city rather than suburbia, the idea to kind of put Carol Ann all by herself in this series. Like, I don't hate any of those ideas.
No, not at all.
But
really strong.
They're strong ideas. They're definitive. They try to take the film out of the suburban, out of the family unit. We can argue about whether it's still a Poltergeist movie or what even that means, but it
does give
but
it
it's a good
new.
decision. It's a good decision.
Yeah,
the problem is it's so even after they sit there and explain who these people are and why we're here, I still didn't know, and I'm not surprised to hear, Mike, that you still didn't know either. Because it was just confusing. So it was just like, it was a good idea, but it was just poorly executed.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a, I don't also, you know, it's that problem where you can, you know, talk about characters who are off screen, and you can sort of say what you like about them, really, because there's a sort of weird implication here that they're in some way that Steve is scapegoating Carol Ann
Mm-hmm.
for the events. I mean, they make that implication, and you know, they don't. It's part of the. It's part of the kind of debunking of it, like there's what people perceive about what happened, and what we know what happened, but it's not entirely clear where the characters from the original movie feel about that. So you don't get a sense of whether, Steve suddenly decided that he no longer believed Carol Ann and that he thought he was part of this mass hypnosis experiment, or that he's saying that to people so he can get his job back, or something. Like there's
right.
There's all these kind of there's all these implications that mess with characters who are not on screen and that we'll never see again, but sort of, I guess, ruin the legacy of them. You don't want to think this about these characters that you like, but the film has to sort of make these implications so any of this makes any kind of sense.
But it's doing it, as you're saying, it's doing it at the expense of characters that we've gotten to know and love and watch grow over the last two films, and so it just makes for a lot of unpleasant surprises. Like a lot of them, it's like remember that family that banded together in the afterlife and defeated the beast? Remember how Stephen grabbed Taylor's spear and stabbed the beast and became a warrior? Well, 6 months later, he just got sick of this shit and shipped his daughter away. That's what I'm talking about like creative continuity behind the camera. If one producer, one set of producers had been behind all of these films, that choice never would have left the runway.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely
right.
I
mean, we've all talked about how strong that idea is of. I think one of the strongest ideas of this, and it's not an original idea, but it's what this movie's kind of pinning its hope on, is that you're basically going to spend the entire movie inside this one building.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And that is compromised by the fact that you have to take Carol Ann to her school for debunking paranormal.
What was the phrase they used? What was the phrase they used for this school?
Oh, I've got it. School for gifted children with emotional problems. Which apparently only exists in Chicago. There was no California equivalent of this they could send her to.
I needed to go to that school. I needed that school as a kid. I thought I was in that school.
Yeah, exactly. I also had a question.
The other fallacy is that you would need to go to the East Coast for that school. If that school's going to be anywhere, it's going to be in California.
I don't know. I could see that. I could see that being in like Maine.
Carol Ann gets out of the car, and other kids start making fun of her. In a way in which they seem to know that she's battled ghosts. So my note was,
because they've seen the first two movies.
Yeah, my note was, is Carol Ann like John McClane famous?
Right.
Like when he's in that DC airport and they're like, that thing at the plaza in LA.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. And we've seen this before, making a character famous for what they've done in previous movies.
Yeah.
But here it's talked about as if she is just the girl who starred in the movie Poltergeist. There's no distinction between. She's the Poltergeist girl. It's like, well, that's so she's basically Heather O'Rourke now.
She's playing herself.
Well, and
this is probably what Heather O'Rourke goes through every day.
That actually lends itself to this question, because the director was fairly adamant about giving Heather O'Rourke more to do in this movie. And so she has far...
Which is a great choice for someone who's in ill health, by the way.
I was just going to say, yeah, exactly. So...
Carry on.
Like...
It's a Julian Beck situation.
Yeah. There is one problem: he has stomach cancer. That'll be fine.
No, that'll actually help us. He'll look super gaunt and freaky.
We're not going to use this character again. Don't worry.
Well, we're killing him at the end of this movie. we will not need him for part 3.
Like, does he do her a disservice by bringing her to the center? Is she like, is it too much?
It ruins everything.
Yeah.
I mean, because you could have had the think how better a movie it would be if all the action was within one building. That's clearly what they want to do.
Right.
Yeah, but they got to take her to school at some point.
Yeah.
And if she wasn't in the movie, you wouldn't have to ever leave the building. And and the quality of the horror is just improved 25% by that.
Right.
By that one difference, which they can't do because they've got to deal with the characters they already have. And the truth is, they don't have to deal with the characters they have. There's nothing that they put that on themselves. And by making Carol Ann even more important, they're just compounding that problem. They're
brought
just
her
a narrative problem in the movie they want to do, which is J.G. Ballard's High Rise with a supernatural twist, which is a great idea for a great idea for a horror movie.
Yeah, I love the idea that it's not a haunted house; it's a haunted skyscraper.
Right.
That's fantastic. But then again, it feels like trying to fit that garment around the form of a Poltergeist movie, or the other way around. Cloaking that idea in a Poltergeist movie means that it can't just be a haunted skyscraper. It has to be a grudge match between Carol Ann and Kane, and it just
like
again
Obi-Wan and Darth Vader.
Yeah, it's
right,
like
exactly.
It just makes it
age-old
small.
rivalry.
Like if this was just a generic movie called The Haunted Skyscraper, you wouldn't have to go to school. You wouldn't want to go to school. You wouldn't want it to be. You wouldn't want the explanation for the haunting to be the leader of a Mormon death cult, because that wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, you want something a bit more modern.
You would want something a bit more modern, a bit more Chicago, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what you would want. But yeah, haunted skyscraper.
The ghost of Al Capone.
Right. Again, but making it the ghost of anyone.
Dancing on a flagpole on the top of the building.
Yeah.
But you see that, like, making it the ghost of anyone immediately makes the movie small. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, if you were to say haunted skyscraper, you're like, oh wow, that could be anything and any number of things. But when you say it's a skyscraper haunted by the ghost of Al Capone, you're like, whoa, that's a comedy, right? Like you're not
exactly.
By making it specific to to one single spirit, you are just reducing the size of the problem unnecessarily. You're not. This is what, for me, this was
you don't even need a I mean, really, you don't even. I hate to say this at this point. You don't even really need a poltergeist. I mean, it's essentially the story of a building where, like a sentient building that breaks down. It's like, it could be Hal.
Yes.
Is what I'm saying.
Right.
Because this building is sort of self-operating almost.
Right.
And
it's like Christine.
And we get possessed cars as well.
Right. Yeah, right. I had big time Christine vibes in that parking garage.
And I don't have a problem with this movie leaning into science fiction because it's a natural bedfellow of horror. Mm-hmm. And with the idea of a modern, technologically advanced high-rise building, the crossovers, that seems organic to me, but it also kind of underlines you don't really need the ghost.
You don't.
This idea of a building that you've set up to be autonomous breaking down and developing an evil personality is kind of good enough.
Right. The selling point of this building, right? So it's like a new Chicago skyscraper, and
glimpse of the future.
You live there, you work there, you shop there. It's a self-contained, literally a vertically integrated system, and.
Sorry.
And so
nice job.
Well played.
So that's the brochure for this building. You never have to leave. Now the horror is you never get to leave. You can never leave. And suddenly now you have what you're saying, which is a haunted house, except it's a skyscraper, and you're not allowed to leave. And then that's exactly what we talked about. So, like, why then, like...
And you never have a moment where somebody's trying to leave and the doors lock and they can't get out. And
right.
You don't get any of that.
Or people who are outside trying to get in who can't get in now. Like, they had the seeds for a really compelling, simple horror premise. And then they were like, yeah, but we need Carol Ann and Kane. We need these transplants from Arizona.
School at some point.
It was
we need her to go to school so she can look through mirrors, and we have a thing from Adam's family burst through a table.
I also say, you know, I think another huge problem here is, at least for me, they make this high rise look way too good. Like, even with the awful shit that happens in the movie, I still think it still kind of looks like a place I want to live and work.
You're buying into the Reagan dream?
I don't know if it is just... I mean, right now it just feels like the dream of someone who has to commute to work, you know?
So
it's the post-COVID dream, I think.
I think you're right.
Yeah, that's true, right.
It's like you just take the elevator to work. I mean, they even try to make it look like a real hardship that every 2 weeks she has to drive her kids to school. Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, but that's 2 weeks you don't.
Right.
Every 2 weeks. That's a small price to pay for living and working in the same building.
Right.
And getting everything you need within this one place. I mean, it's kind of... And they can't make that seem creepy to me. Because I desire it so much with the life I lead now. And I'm sure a lot of people watching this movie in 2022 are going to feel the same. Like, what are these people... Like, what's the anxiety here? Like, this is anti-anxiety.
So
to me,
you would put up with the haunting in order just to be like an elevator or a ride away from your supermarket?
Well, clearly it's not going to affect anyone. You know, I'm not related to Carol Ann, so it's not going to affect me.
I'm fine.
I mean, they even make a point of saying, like, this doesn't affect anyone else in the building. It's like an illusion to everyone else in the building.
Oh, that's
apparently.
right. They do. Yeah. Nobody else can see what's going on. Not even the security cameras.
I mean, that was the final straw for me. I was like, I'm there. I'm gonna put down an application now.
Well, what's funny about that, and this is, I think, speaks to the late '80s of it, because they did create this little capitalist utopia, this consumerist utopia in this building, and unlike Cuesta Verde, which was abandoned, like. You can imagine this building does just fine after the events of this movie. Yes, like this movie, nothing brings this building down. This building is not an aborted attempt at consumerism. This is just a blip. This is like a growing pains for what will go on to become a wonderful building in the Chicago skyline.
We'll fix those cracked mirrors and we're back on our way.
Yeah, that's the extent of the damage is cracked mirrors.
Yeah.
It seemed from the ending of the movie, it seems like you might get a bit of horror lightning now and again.
That's true. Yeah, right.
And you know, some sinister laughter. You might hear some sinister laughter in the skies.
Did you hear that evil laugh? Yeah.
But nothing specific enough to really put you off living in this capitalist utopia. It's even got an art gallery. You're not even culturally deprived.
It's true.
I bet there's a movie theater.
I was going to say, do you feel like... Do you feel like they even... Because I got the sense that even though it was this new location, we kept seeing the same parts of that new location. Like, we didn't really explore everything that there was to explore in this vertically integrated skyscraper.
We're in the hallway right outside their home a lot.
A lot of service elevators, a lot of hallways, a lot of parking garages, not a lot of grocery stores, movie theaters, shopping mall.
Yeah.
rooftop gardens. We saw the pool, but we didn't see the gym. Like, there were a lot of things that I felt like they left on the table, and that could have been a budgetary thing. It's like we can only afford service elevators, or if it was just driven by like, if it's not a space that organically has a mirror in it, we're not going to use it.
I mean, that's a great point. What's up with this movie and mirrors?
Okay, we could do a whole segment on mirrors.
I was just going to ask you guys what you thought of the mirrors, because to me, there was an idea there. And what I like about it more than anything is just that they shot everything practically. So on that level, I kind of dig it, but the idea itself seems to go nowhere and have no point.
No. I don't even think it's an idea. I think it's a motif.
Yeah.
It's like it's a compact mirrors, two-way mirrors, mirror doors, mirror elevator glass,
puddles that are mirrors.
Right. We're just latching onto this one sort of visual device, and at no point is it explicated in terms of the paranormal.
Never.
Yeah.
Right. It's just...
And it's completely new to the series. And this series has seen...
Right.
And this series has had 2 key set pieces in front of a mirror. It has had the guy in the first movie, the guy ripping his face off in the bathroom mirror, and then Robbie getting attacked by his braces in the second movie.
So this is raising the stakes.
It's taking
attack.
these...
We need more mirrors.
I just think that the first 2 movies had mirrors in them, and the mirrors actually had nothing to do with the scenes. It's not like one thing was happening in the mirror and another thing was happening. So it's not like we've never seen a mirror in the series before. We've seen them in several times, and they've never had anything to do. They've never mattered.
What's interesting is you see them all over the place in this movie, and they still don't matter.
Well, they are. I think it's the new idea and the new rule is that the mirrors are somehow the portal to the other side, which we've now again we have traveled to the other side. Now this is the third way in 3 movies.
Time, yeah.
The first way was through the closet.
But at the end, they don't go through a mirror; they go through the outside window,
which again makes no sense because. They say in this movie, they say Kane doesn't control the outside. Yet, in the last movie, he was strolling through the neighborhood and walking up to the porch.
Singing.
It was inside he couldn't get to without permission. He was like a vampire.
So what I'm saying is in the first movie, the doorway to the other side was the children's closet, which is fantastic because what kid doesn't imagine a fucking monster in their closet? Like you want to play into the myths and ideas and fears we already have, right? So they make the entrance to the afterlife a child's closet. Love it, perfect. Ship it.
Yeah.
In the second movie, it's Taylor's campfire. No, it's the fire. That's how they jump into the other side. It's Taylor's campfire.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Underground
to get to the other side. Yeah.
That's
one of them ghost fires.
One of them ghost fires.
One of those mystic fires.
So now I guess there's 2 ways to get to the afterlife. A ghost fire and a child's closet. And then the third movie comes along and says, hold my beer. And says, we're going to go into the other side through a mirror. Not just any mirror, every mirror. Every mirror. And we're going to set our film in a literal funhouse of mirrors.
Yeah.
And again, I like you, Mike. I appreciate that they kind of did everything in camera. It kind of feels like you're at a Vegas magic show where you're like,
it gives the movie something. It gives the movie a visual. Visually, it's entertaining and interesting, but at a certain point, you say to yourself, "It's for nothing and doing nothing," so it's just for show.
But again, it only really applies to Carol Ann because Matt made the excellent point about what child doesn't think a monster's going to come out of their closet. But Carol Ann lives in her bedroom is covered in mirrors.
Yeah.
So I'm sure she's scared of monsters coming out of her mirrors. But most kids don't live in in a bedroom that's entirely walled by mirrors. So
I
it
think,
really, again, it only applies to this one kid.
I know, and
who happens
and
to live in a high rise that's full of mirrors.
Because also the decorating style of this skyscraper is very 80s, and I think, you know, when you think about this movie in terms of cocaine, the idea that there is a demon in the mirror is a palpable thing. And I look, Mike and I have been watching a lot of movies from the early 80s. Cocaine crops up in the strangest of places.
An alarming amount.
So when I try to imagine the rooms in which Poltergeist 3 was conceived, when they're talking about all these mirrors and all of the demons inside the mirrors, I'll bet somebody brought up cocaine. I'm just gonna say it. I'm just gonna say it.
That's a way better ending you're proposing here, that we kind of pull out and the building is just part of a mirror on which an Hollywood executive is doing cocaine.
That's how the movie feels.
Men in Black.
Right?
Yeah.
That's how the movie feels.
Yeah. They didn't have an ending for this movie, and there's your perfect ending. Like, let's Saint Elsewhere it. Let's fucking go for...
Let's go into the snow globe.
Let's pull it back.
You know who? It should pull back, and it should be Steven doing the cocaine. That's who it should be.
Right.
Yes.
Saying, I hate my daughter.
I'm a terrible father, is what he should say.
Finding my manhood only lasted so long.
Yeah. Or no, he's just muttering to himself, I am a warrior.
All right, let's take another break and then we'll come back and finish up. We'll be right back, everyone. Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out. We're back once again, everyone. Matt and Tom and I are here. We're discussing Poltergeist 3, finishing up with this weird fucking movie. So, to me, this movie, I've got two big problems with this movie. One is bringing Kane back without having Kane back.
Yeah.
It's a terrible
Thoughts?
idea.
Right.
This is, again, not to... I don't want to just keep giving this movie notes, but you don't need... Well, first of all, you don't need a poltergeist. If you're going to have a poltergeist, there's no reason why it has to be Kane.
No reason.
No reason.
If you told
Especially
me...
when the actor who played Kane has died. This is where we can literally do Poltergeist of the Week.
Yes.
Right.
You know what I mean? We can...
Starring special guest Poltergeist.
Special guest Poltergeist.
Don Knotts.
Yeah. William Shatner.
No, if you tell me that Carol Ann's clairvoyance makes her a lightning rod for Poltergeist in the same way that Tangina is, like, then wherever she goes, she's gonna have to. She's gonna be like Angela Lansbury. She's just gonna, she's just going to be solving the murder of the week or the poltergeist of the week. And and again, if you let her age and let her mature and let her step into this role, then you have an actual evolution of the series and not just another. It just feels like a bait and switch. It's like, we're going to sell you a poltergeist movie and give you, Haunted Skyscraper, and it just, oh God, I have so many questions. I have so many questions.
Again, the thing about this movie, what are the rules? You're not explaining anything to me.
And doesn't it also assume? I mean, we talked about this in
and why the fuck?
Episode.
Sorry, but why the fuck does Kane need help going to the light? It's a light. Go to it.
He was killed in the last. His spirit, the beast,
yeah, exactly,
was killed. Craig T. Nelson grabbed Taylor's spear, and for as hokey as it is, it was pretty clear. He took the fucking spear and he stuck it into the H.R. Geiger.
Or one of the many heads on that creature.
One of the many heads of the beast, and the beast went.
There you go. He left too many heads alive.
And the beast went "Arr!" and spun off into nowhere, and that was the end of Kane. And then they're like, he's still here, and now he's trapped in a mirror, and he needs help going to the light.
But for Tom's point earlier, we have the lightning bolt hit the building and the laugh afterwards, after he's gotten what he wanted.
Yes.
He should be appeased.
Well, that's just their, horror randomizer.
Yeah.
That's just something to end the movie with. That really bears no relation to anything. It's like
It reminded me.
That's just the laughter and lightning, setting on the synthesizer, right?
It's the Freddy Krueger sweater on the top of the convertible car coming down.
I did get some Nightmare 2 vibes from this movie as well. When the teens were having a pool party, I thought as soon as you see that in a horror movie, something's gone wrong.
Right, but what's so funny is nothing actually went wrong with that pool party.
No. Yeah, exactly, right.
It only went wrong.
And they were also trying to break into that pool like it was some kind of heist movie.
That's my note, Tom. I have my note is swimming pool heist. Like the amount of shenanigans that they have to go through to go swimming at night. They're going Hudson Hawk level thievery with the cameras and shit to try and just take it.
They're literally doing everything short of killing the security guard to get into that pool.
It's so ridiculous.
Which, by the way, again, if this is such a great place to live and work and play, wouldn't the pool be open past 9?
Right, exactly. That's I can't go swimming after 9 p.m.
What? Why is this pool?
Here.
The price of paradise is the pool closes at 9 p.m.
Why is this pool monitored by 15 security cameras round the clock? What is so special about this pool? Oh my God!
And the movie makes, I guess, there's always there's a lateral telecommunications device in each of these movies, and here it's CCTV.
Mm-hmm.
Not that they really do anything with it, but I think it just speaks to cinema's at this time growing obsession with video surveillance technology, pre-Slither and Rising Sun.
Right. Yeah.
And it's a way of getting them to do their screen snow callback. So we get to see a TV screen.
You're right. Because they out of nowhere, all of a sudden, Carol Ann is on the other side, and we hearken back to the Carol Ann voice distantly calling from the other side, and it just feels so late in the movie for them to make that callback.
For me, it was like when they would make those callbacks to the original, whether it was the voice or the quick shot of screen snow, it was, again, I was like, stop reminding me of a better movie.
Right.
Yeah.
You're not, this is not an Easter egg hunt. Like this is, and you talk about things that like add it to the list of things that they set up but don't use. Like, so in the first movie, right? She becomes fascinated with the screen snow. In the second movie, it's the toy phone that
Right.
she talks to her
I know
dead
you're
grandmother.
going with this.
And in this movie, they introduce the speak and spell. Now, the speak and spell is objectively terrifying. The voice of speak and spell is objectively terrifying.
But it's a modern day Ouija board as well.
Yes.
It's crying out to be it's crying out to be used in a paranormal way,
right.
and they
drop the ball.
They have her they sit Carol Ann down with the toy of the movie, the speak and spell, and it's saying spell this, and she spells it and goes, aha, very good, spell that, and she spells it. And I'm like, oh, what's he gonna ask her to spell now? Like, what's the third thing?
Exactly.
And then it's like,
I will kill you.
yeah, spell I will kill you, or spell code of the light, or like spell a murder or something like that. And instead of that, it's like Carol Ann.
Bitch.
Yeah, it's like somebody asks, calls her from the other room. She puts the speak and spell down. She leaves the room, and the speak and spell is never used again. And it's like, even when they have a device in front of them, they don't know how to kind of pick it up and build something around it.
Nothing happens with the CCTV as well. It's not like any ghosts appear in it, or
right.
It's just used as a kind of in a sort of prototype of the twist in Speed. Kind
right,
of.
Right.
They put in an old tape to cover their pool shenanigans, which again, it's got nothing to do. It's not scary, is it? Really?
It's not scary, but like, what were they gonna do in that pool that they did not need video evidence of? Because what they ended up doing in the pool was just
Sex
swimming.
And Coke,
they
clearly,
were just
1988.
right. They were gonna this whole thing to get into the pool. The teenagers. It's teenagers going into to play in a pool, but they were acting like they were gonna go murder someone, and they needed to like make sure that there was no evidence of their murder. It was so strange. And by the way,
and this is to
then
say nothing of the
break
fact that Laura Flynn Boyle makes the decision to leave a child alone.
yes,
At the behest of the child, but it always struck me while watching this movie that is ridiculous.
Mm.
I mean, this
Like,
is
it's a ridiculous choice
pretty
to make.
common. Well, it's not so much in a horror movie, but what's kind of unusual about the Poltergeist series, and what I kind of admire about all these films really, is that they don't scapegoat the bad horror parents.
Mm-hmm.
Bad horror movies are full of bad parental choices.
Yes.
Right.
But the Poltergeist movies, the parents are sort of, they never descend to that. They make good choices throughout these movies.
Not
so
this one.
it's odd to see someone abandoning a child in a Poltergeist movie, because that's we never do that. The family unit is sacrosanct.
I made the same note.
throughout these movies.
I made the same note, and this movie is predicated on parents abandoning a child.
Right. Exactly.
Like her actual parents have abandoned her and shipped her off to Chicago.
Well, that's true. Yeah,
And
exactly.
so-
that makes no sense.
And so from the whole problem for Nancy Allen is living in a situation where there are now two kids in her apartment, and neither of them are hers. She's married an older man in Tom Skerritt, who is, as we know, is involved. And so she's married Tom Skerritt, and Tom Skerritt has this child from a previous marriage, and now they've agreed to take in Jo Beth Williams' daughter. And so now, so her arc, if you were to call it that, and if this movie has if the movie has a protagonist,
next big problem.
Yeah. So her arc is learning to take up the mantle of mother. That's sort of her arc, right? That she doesn't want to be a mother.
Did this come as a surprise to either of you? Because, like,
it just seems so out of place in the series.
Yeah, like her not wanting to be called Trish or Aunt Trish at the beginning of the movie, to me, did not denote enough that she didn't even want this child with them.
No, not at all. I didn't
So
understand.
when that turn came, my note was, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, she wanted to just leave and, like, abandon a child. At that point, you're so not on her side that you think Tom Skerritt shouldn't even want to be with her. Ever.
Yeah, then...
Well, that's the thing.
And so it turns the whole love of family being together inside out in a way where you can't, so...
But the movie's also telling you, once again, that we still have that feel-good vibe about the married couple at the center of the movie. But the movie gives us no reason to believe, and the actors are playing it fine. Like I believe their chemistry. I believe they love each other. There's just nothing behind it in the story or the characterization. Like on the page, there's nothing that tells us why these two are in love. They're selling it really well. Tom Skerritt keeps grabbing Nancy Allen's hand and kissing it and looking into her eyes, and like it's like making the best of a bad job, but. Nothing.
See, but that makes it worse for me because he's selling it well.
That makes it. I know. I'm not putting it. I don't think the actors lack chemistry. I think they cast the right people, but they didn't write them properly.
No, yeah, not at all.
Or direct them properly so that we understand why they love each other.
But in trying to give Nancy
Allen
this
they want to
arc,
be a family unit that the movie keeps telling us that they are.
In trying to give Nancy Allen that arc, they discount everything that we've learned about how important family and love is in the first two movies.
Yes. They not only just
and I mean the counter arc here is that Carol Ann has to sort of accept that she's been abandoned by her family and accept this new family, right? Because it's all she's got. Which, as far as arcs go, is pretty depressing.
It's totally depressing. Look, I mean, if there's a formula to a Poltergeist movie, in my opinion, it's that ghosts attack the family unit.
Right.
Period. Yeah. And they do it through...
They're predatory. Family predators.
Yeah, they do it through abduction or possession. There's the Stephen possession in the second one, and there's obviously the Carol Ann abduction at the center of the first one. And so that's how they attack the family unit. And again, it makes no sense that then the poltergeist actually turns out to be a religious leader who would not attack a family unit. Like, I don't, it's like...
Which, by the way, is made no mention of here.
No, it's like...
Just to underline how little we need... that never plays in.
All I'm saying is the formula for a poltergeist film is pretty simple, which is ghosts attack an intact family unit. And so when you start this movie and you have a family unit that is not pre-intact, what is there to save? There's nothing to fight for. No. There's nothing to fight for. And so what this movie tries to do is tries to take a fractured family unit and create a family unit over the course of this trauma. Now, the problem with that is, and I had this sinking feeling halfway through this film. I got this feeling. I went, oh no, this movie takes place over the course of one night, doesn't it? Like I was like, you can't build a family in one night. I don't care how traumatic that night is. You're not going to get there in one night. I'm sorry. Like it was one of these things where I felt like the movie convention of, and this all happens in one night, like really undercut what they were trying to do with the characters. You can buy a lot. A lot of movies take place over the course of 3 days, right? It's 3 days of the Condor, right? So
yeah, right.
3 days of the Condor is based on the book called 6 Days of the Condor. So like they you can get a lot done. You can get a lot done.
The movie producers like, we got to cut that in half.
Yeah, exactly. You can get a lot. You can get a lot done in 3 days and 2 nights in a movie. And I think if this movie had taken place 3 days and 2 nights, it would have been a different. We might be talking about something else, but it tries. It says no.
Well, that's the thing about horror movies.
I'm going to do this in one night, and they fail.
Yeah, because that's a thing about horror movies, and especially haunted house movies, is as an audience, the second it becomes night, you tense up, and when you get to the day, you kind of because you're always thinking ghosts don't fuck with people during the day, you know?
Right.
And so you get that those levels of tension and release where you kind of. And
but
this
again,
movie doesn't have that because it's all.
Well, because genre and story are fundamentally at odds.
Right.
That's a great point.
And especially the parts of the story, that have to do with resolving whatever happened to the characters that we know from previous movies. That's why, you know, you got to get rid of them. I think this is a fine horror movie, and most of it is to do with scares and effects and devices that work really well. I mean, they're kind of age-old, foolproof horror moments in this movie. The concept,
and there's enough of them
there
to make me start liking the movie. I mean, we've been very critical of it, but
yeah, but the story kind of cancels out the good that's done with the kind of genre pleasures.
But because the genre pleasures, I constantly found myself going, ooh, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
And I'd say that like once every 7 to 11 minutes. And it made me think it was possibly a better movie than it really is.
Yeah.
And what did you think about having to bring back Tangina yet again, like kind of pull Zelda Rubinstein off the shelf?
It felt very Shining to me.
Yeah, I had a Scatman note. Yeah, definitely.
It felt very Scatman.
I wish we'd seen what erotic art is in Tangina's outfit. Speaking, when you see Scatman Crothers' place in The Shining, you're like, yeah, that's probably what is in his apartment. Yeah. And I'm desperate to know what the Tangina equivalent of that is.
That's great.
I got the sense from it that they had Tangina for 2.5 days.
Oh yeah.
That was the sense that I got, and they just gave her the exposition dump, and you know it's like instead of pausing and conceiving where Tangina might live, they just put her on a plane because you can just find a plane set easily enough. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like they put her in a generic location. Might as well put her in a cafe or something. Like it was. They just put her in a generic location. When what. Again, and it was another situation.
They used that plane set 3 years later for Die Hard 2, I bet.
Right, and it was another one of these situations where they had to leave the skyscraper, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, in Shining, it works at that point to go to Scatman. Because
also in Shining, he has to do so much work to get there.
Yeah.
And so when you're relieved to see him in the building just to get immediately axed, you know.
You have a whole scene of him hiring a snowplow from Tony Burton.
Yeah.
Which you wouldn't think would work in a horror movie, but Stanley Kubrick obviously knows better than me.
Yeah, but I definitely got Scatman vibes from her appearance and her functionality in the.
And speaking to what we were saying earlier, Matt, wouldn't it have been interesting if she got all that way and couldn't get into the building?
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
that's the thing. It's like they didn't make anything hard.
Yeah.
For any character, nothing was hard. Like it wasn't even hard for Nancy Allen to run an art gallery. Like that wasn't even.
Right.
And of course, it was like, and what is there a more 80s job for a character to have than running an art gallery?
Well, I'd say running an art gallery where you're hosting an opening for a Japanese conceptual artist with a sushi buffet.
It's a layer cake of 80s references. It's a bean dip.
It's a bean dip, right?
I did one. What do you make? I mean, this is so minor. It probably didn't even get on anyone's radar. But those twisted figures that artist is making.
No, it made my radar.
Is that like a Geiger reference? I don't know what was.
I don't know
Yeah,
if
the
it's
art.
Geiger or not, but
The art in the
Yeah.
gallery, it looked like they were
Because
going
we do
to
focus on it quite a
Yeah,
lot, or more than we should.
they were going to make a meal of it later, like it was going to come to life and
That's what I
terrorize.
thought.
That's what I assumed. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
like all of these sculptures were going to come to life and terrorize the people at the opening, which would have been great.
yeah, exactly. Because
Um,
once you start seeing their heads turn in the mirrors and stuff,
yeah,
I thought, oh, they're gonna go haywire during the opening, and we're gonna have ourselves a scene, and it never pays off.
it doesn't, because it's another one of those stupid moments where a horror film treads water.
Yeah,
It's that
Oh, this
it's more
movie
treading
literally
water.
treads water.
yeah.
Yeah, they break into a pool just to tread water.
Well, and it's like if your movie's 80 minutes and you need some filler, do that.
Yeah,
Make something
Yeah.
interesting.
Have a long tracking shot in an art gallery focusing on like a distorted humanoid sculpture.
Yeah.
Sit on it, but then never
don't-
use it
well-
again. Like it was. Oh God, it was so frustrating.
The only point where they really go the distance on something in the movie is when Donna returns in a kind of skeleton cocoon.
Yeah.
And it's a really expertly executed piece of body horror.
It is.
Having her break out of this skeleton. It's full of creepy crawlies, and for a moment we get this kind of full visceral effect that is completely absent from the rest of the movie. I mean, it stands out for that reason, but it also stands out just because it's really well executed.
It's really well executed, and then they sort of, and then it seems like she's been rescued from the other side, and then the movie tells us later, no, she's more of like a pod
Yeah, it
person.
turns it on its head.
But
which is
also I'm fine with, except the problem is Scott. What happened to Scott in this movie? Where did he go?
Well, he fell in the slime.
Okay,
ice,
so
which
so
I'm
Scott
calling
so
Slice.
Scott is Donna's the guy that she's flirting with, and they're sneaking into the pool together. So he's the horror movie boyfriend,
and he's illegally obtaining beer, but he's paying for it.
right? Which is,
And that's the kind of guy Scott is. That's all you need to know about Scott. He's going to pay.
he's gonna steal beer
He's
but
going to
leave
pay
a
for
20.
the beer that he's not legally allowed to have.
I think that is actually what earned the film the PG-13 rating. Right there is that you steal beer but leave $20.
If you watch this on HBO Max, it comes up at the top. It says fear, sex, teens, underage teen drinking,
and also polite theft. So to recap Scott's arc, so he's the horror movie boyfriend of the older sister, right? So you know that this guy is just he's gonna get the axe in some way, right? He's just sort of set up to die, right? And he has such a wonderfully he's such a wonderful 80s look about him too. Like I have a note here that says Scott has the biggest hair of all. Like he just has his hair.
He has all the hair.
He has all of it.
His whole family, though, like straight out of Home Alone.
Right. Right. So he and Laura Flynn Boyle, they fall into the puddle in the parking garage, which in the scope of this film makes just marginally more sense in context than it does out of context. So they fall.
Any clear surface is game for the other side.
And so he falls into the puddle with her. He is then rescued from the pool. Like he jumps through the ice and he's covered in ice, and then he thaws out. And he's the first one rescued from the pool. And then Laura Flynn Boyle is rescued from the other side when she jumps out of Tangina's corpse. Okay, and then you're like, okay, 2 out of the 3 people who fell into the pool are back, right? And then the movie says, and they kind of show Donna and Scott together, and then their sort of their evil plan, whatever that was. They're just sort of laughing.
Well, they've come back from the Dark Lodge from Twin Peaks, basically.
Right.
Infected with the. It's just a crossover. They're infected with the soul of Bob.
So now they're evil, and they go off together. And then Donna is sort of really rescued in the end of the film.
Yes.
But we never see Scott again.
We never.
No, we never.
We
see
never
Scott
see
again.
him alive
And
or
we
dead.
never see Carol Ann's face.
We never see
There's a lot
Scott
of-
again, and he is one of these loose ends of this film. As we kind of circle to the ending of this film, for
Yeah,
me,
don't pull
this
on that thread.
this movie looks like they ran out of money in the middle of the movie. That's what it looks like.
Right.
It looks like they just honestly.
But
did
that's
not
remarkable
know how to end.
considering the fact that they spent more money to reshoot an ending.
Right. So it's the abrupt ending of this movie got me out of my seat. I literally leaped up and said, "Wait, what? Like you can what? That was the last shot? No." Like I was absolutely incredulous that this was the end of the movie.
because we're just walking around the building for a good 20 minutes.
Oh,
And then
that's what one of my
and then the
notes
film's-
is. This
and
movie
the
is
film's
too fucking long. Why am I up around 140 over an hour and 40 minutes? Stop it. I don't need to see Tom Skerritt and Nancy Allen chase someone who's clearly not Heather O'Rourke for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
In a parking garage.
I like it when the abattoir comes to life, though. That was if that was a reshoot, that was worthwhile. When there's the kind of the Muppet pigs in the abattoir. I quite like
Oh,
that.
yeah, right.
But apart from that, you're just waiting out the clock, the movie clock.
Oh my
For
god.
so much of this, which is bizarre when, it's like, what's the difference between, if you cut the 7 minutes, you've still got a 90-minute movie. So that solves your problem of being too short.
Well,
Now you're too long.
They hadn't like, here's the thing. So in Poltergeist 1, like I said, like this movie tries these films seem to think that it's not a Poltergeist movie unless Carol Ann gets kidnapped. Like that
Right.
That's what they think the glue is.
Yeah.
And it's not that, right? It's just not that. And so
That's what's on the poster, though.
Yeah,
So-
right. Yeah.
God.
Maybe they've just seen the poster and not the movie itself.
But all I'm saying is, like, if you look at the first movie, Carol Ann being kidnapped is only the second act of the film. There's a really compelling first act to that film and a really chilling third act to that film. You know, they get Carol Ann back by the end of the second act.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the movie's not over. And these two movies after only end when Carol Ann is rescued, and which gives her like no agency. She's not the hero of this film. She can't be the hero of this film. She's just waiting around
'Cause she has
every
to be
third
saved.
act to be rescued. And yeah, it's just such a frustrating thing. It's like they choose to lift all the wrong things from the original. In my opinion, they just choose to lift all the wrong things. And I don't know, did you guys see the reboots or the?
I did.
Yeah, I know you did, Mike.
No, I didn't.
Well, Mike, I actually think we talked about it on the other show, and they were trying to reboot it, which I guess is a valiant effort. I mean, the first movie is, the effects are dated and all of that stuff, but God, man, I don't know, the lightning in the bottle. The lightning in the bottle.
But it ends up looking better than, this movie does, because there's too many mistakes to go over in that reboot, but.
Well, we have the possessed cars, which, the most on-the-nose reference to Stephen King in a franchise full of Stephen King ripoffs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just sneak one more in before the end. And then, nothing happens, there's no story progression in the last half hour of the movie.
Right.
So it's really, it all comes in that final that final scene.
And
The
why
final 3
snow?
minutes.
Why snow? Why cold? Out of
The heating and ventilation systems.
that's just words you just gave me.
Well, they make reference at the beginning of the movie. You know, it begins with the inability to control heat and hot and cold in the building.
Oh no, I get
again,
that. But where does that
yeah.
come from? From the other two movies?
Oh, it doesn't.
Oh,
but except corpses.
No,
corpses
it's
are
the
cold,
building.
Matt.
It's the
Corpses
building.
are cold.
It's specifically the building, which is great. Which is great, but there's nothing to do with it doesn't have to do with a poltergeist, and certainly not Kane.
Well, what I think is again, like in this alternate universe where this is not a poltergeist movie, it's just a haunted skyscraper movie, and the idea that you turn all the promises of this skyscraper into horror.
Yes.
Right. So
exactly.
If it's a snowy inside, this building should be in Phoenix. Like, right. You know what I mean? Like the whole thing is like, we promise you climate control. We promise you relief from the heat outside. And then inside it's a meat locker and it's going to threaten to freeze you to death. I think not only is the final set piece, which is the auto garage. Why did I say auto garage? I feel like I'm it's a garage. Like a parking garage. Automobiles. So it's a garage for horseless carriages. It's this garage that's sort of in the middle of a blizzard, right? And so you have double Stephen King references. You have Christine and the end of The Shining happening at the same. If you can imagine those two books colliding, then you have kind of the third act set piece of this film. And again, it just feels like not any. It's picking up on none of the track laid by the previous two films. Yet, like I said before, this film, to watch it, you absolutely have to have seen the first two films to understand even remotely what's happening. Mm-hmm. It makes you it requires that you know canon, yet it follows none of the rules laid by that canon.
Yeah, and it plays fast and loose with the mythology, because now it's the house again.
Yes,
that's the problem, because she was born in that house, and I'm pretty sure the last movie told us that wasn't the reason. But now it is the reason.
Was she born in that skyscraper?
But it still follows her outside the house. So
yeah.
I guess I don't know. Maybe that's as good as an explanation of any. It's me and the house. I guess that's what the movie's saying.
No, it's her and Kane. For whatever reason, like it's this is the rubber match.
Says, I was born in a house that had this guy in, and that's why he's following me.
Oh wow.
We can all relate to that.
As close as we get to, yeah. So basically, the first movie tells us it's the house. The second movie tells us it's her. This movie tells us it's both, and neither. Because Tangina also says he's found her, which is assuming we know who the he is in this, because Kane is dead and he was only in the sequel, so. It's kind of it's interesting, but you're absolutely right, Matt, that a line like that only makes sense if you've seen the first two movies, and you have to have definitely seen the last movie,
right?
Yes,
which it's not like you can come back into this series after just seeing the first. It weighs everything down, and then this poor excuse for a finale is.
Yeah,
it's sad, you know. It's like it's just a cinematic resignation like
it's
that.
It's a mark misser. And so, is there anything left for either of you? The end of this movie's sort of a muddled disaster, so much so that they have us looking at that stupid window washer crane coming out for a good solid 4 to 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I think we've alluded to the fact that the ease with which Tangina dispatches Kane undermines his threat both here
And in the last movie, right?
And countermands the ending to the last movie. And I does she sacrifice herself? I don't even know if that's clear. Is that clear? Is that what you both got from it?
Yeah, that she's gonna lead. She's the one who's gonna lead him into the light
because she's going to the light herself. So hey, why not?
She's on her way.
I'm going that way.
Exactly. It's on my way.
I can give you a ride.
Yeah, it's not. Is that a sacrifice, or it's just like, hey, I happen to be here. It's a bit of a convenience.
I happen to be dead anyway.
But it just underlines that she's pure like plot function in this movie, right? Yeah. She comes in at a point where we need something explained,
and then she dies,
and she's redundant until the point in the movie where the movie needs her to sacrifice herself to get Kane out of the way.
That's what I'm saying too about like copying all the wrong things. Like they looked at Poltergeist 2 and said, we need somebody to fulfill that really satisfying grandmother role that the grandmother did. Yeah. And it's like, no, the grandmother was not a great character, and not like, and her appearance at the end was super cheesy. She
died for a reason.
Yeah, right. Like but they photocopy that and lay it on Tangina when, God, it just seems like the wrong thing to copy. And then, you know, by the third movie, Tangina, her character is kind of, I don't know, regressed in a way. Like it.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. It's as you said, Matt. Like she's there just to be the, you know, the stock horror archetype of the expert, so she can play off Dr. Seaton as the skeptic.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a step backwards, because that's like, you know, it's horror 101 basically, mm-hmm. And she's definitely more interesting than that. You know, simply just saying, no, the supernatural exists. Dr. Seaton says, no, it doesn't. It's all mass hypnosis, and they just go
back and forth,
around and around, yeah,
back and forth,
yeah,
calling each other charlatans.
You know, it's you can, it's like you can start with that, but you have to do something else with it to make it interesting. Yeah. You know, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for instance, does something with that's a bit more interesting. But you know, here you just go, oh, here's a couple of archetypes giving their, you know, stock dialogue.
Yeah, mm-hmm. It's treading water, and more treading water.
But I thought it was kind of not funny, because none of this is funny. It's just sad. Obviously, you don't see a close up on Carol Ann because it's not her. And there's a literal smoke screen around her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, they cover the scene with smoke to hide the fact that it's not her. And I'm like, doesn't this all conversely draw attention to her absence?
Yes, right.
Like it's not like there's a way of filming this in where you wouldn't notice that she wasn't in the scene.
I can't even imagine like what it was like on that day, you know.
Oh, I mean, horrific.
Yeah, because like in that scene, like you were trying to cover up the fact that the actors who played two of the roles that are in that scene have passed away. One just recently. Like they're not showing her because it's not her. They're not showing Kane. They're not showing Julian Beck because it's not Julian Beck. And then they're not showing Craig T. Nelson and Joe Beth Williams because they're not there. Like it's this. It takes the what you guys have called the convention or of surrogates.
Yeah.
And it takes it to this grotesque level of surrogacy.
Yes. Right.
That this movie is almost like masquerading as a movie at the end, as a Poltergeist movie.
Yeah.
Almost like a knockoff of the Poltergeist franchise, rather than something that was made by the same people.
It feels like the 99-cent store.
Right, like some off-market version of Poltergeist, where you're like, no, you know.
Yeah, you legally can't use certain aspects of the movie, so you have to sort of write around.
It's like having it's like having Crust toothpaste instead of Crest.
Right.
And also, you know, very very Ed Wood, you know, Ed Wood did with Plan 9 from Outer Space when Lugosi died after filming one scene. You know, they had a guy covering his face with a cloak.
Mm-hmm.
For the rest of the movie, and obviously there's just one moment in this movie where Carol Anna is played by a different actor, but as soon as you kind of make that leap, you've made a different kind of movie. I mean, there's a famous, I can't remember the name of it now. There's a famous Jean Harlow movie which was made. She died during the making of it, and so like half the scenes in the movie are done with a double, and it's, you know, her with a scarf over her face, or her looking through binoculars so you can't tell it's her, and it just kind of amazes me because this scene is so unnecessary.
Right, yeah.
There's a million ways you can tell us that Caroline came back cinematically with footage you already have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen some of it in the movie as well. So, like, I don't know if they felt they had to do this as a tribute to her, but it comes out looking the opposite of that, like something very distasteful that leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah.
And you can't and makes the movie feel sad. I mean, it just makes me, it makes me think. It just
bums you out.
I bet those actors are thinking, oh, we shouldn't have spent most of the movie physically attacking this girl who was at the end of her life. You know, that's it must be what's going through their minds.
Yeah. This just feels like a bad idea that just got worse. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish this was even like it you know, knowing everything about the making of and Heather O'Rourke's death, it even erases any opportunity to like have fun watching a bad movie. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
It just like you can't even go there with this film, even though at times it dips into the ridiculous at times, but that is just that just sort of takes it out of bounds. Knowing sort of the meta story of the making of the film. Yeah.
But also drawing attention to it cinematically, which is what this last scene does.
Yeah.
You know, if you watch the Cursed Films documentary, you know, they show this scene as an example of, you know, while the director is saying, I said we should have pulled the plug, you know, but we had to shoot that. You know, they told me I had to shoot this, so we just shot it without her, and we were all just thinking we got to get through this one day.
God, that's gut wrenching.
That's how it feels on screen.
Yeah.
Like you can't. It's hard to unsee that, and the tone of it's bizarre.
Would you recommend this movie to anybody?
I don't know.
That's tough.
There are definite. I think you can learn a lot as a horror director about it in specific, if you're studying specific areas like jump scares or practical effects.
Yeah, right.
But not really, that not beyond that kind of specialism.
There's not enough there to say, give it a look-see. But like I said, on my initial watch, I kept like you were saying, Tom, like there's enough individually picked out parts,
right?
And they happen every so often enough for me to, be convinced, is this movie close to good? But then when you sit down like we are and you talk it out and you think about, like, in all the places and all the instances in which this movie is failing, it's failing a lot.
It's kind of, it is more, one of my first notes for this was it's more like most sequels are, right? It's like a mix of legacy characters and surrogates, people who are established film stars, up and coming actors, unknowns. It's kind of, this is probably, this is the mean for a lot of horror sequels. Like the other side obviously Matt's right. Creatively, no one came back, but on screen, it looks like everyone comes back.
Yeah.
And that's abnormal. This is, it's more normal to have these ridiculous kind of workarounds for why the characters from the previous movie aren't there. It's like I think we're making it sound like it's more atypical than it is.
Mm-hmm.
This is a run of the mill.
Oh, it's interesting.
Third movie that's trying to drag up whatever it can from the franchise, but also trying to thrust it in very definitely in a new direction to disguise the fact that you're missing all these elements. And you feel like if they'd worked harder at either end of that spectrum, we could have ended up with a good movie.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't amount to that. There just isn't enough. It doesn't have enough going for it. It doesn't have enough content going for it in the end to sort of take you over the line of a good movie.
What about a credit check, Tom?
Okay. By the way, this gets no less depressing. I try and rank these the credits of the movies. I think, was it Terminator Salvation? I said this is the greatest.
I think so. Yeah.
Terminator Genesis.
Genesis-wise,
because you had two characters on screen called Clark. No, two characters on screen called Connor, who were related in the movie, and then two actors played by two actors called Clark, who were not related outside the movie. Here, it's more sad. It's the saddest thing ever. They make a point of noting that they've recast Kane in the credits. And again, it's that same thing. It's like we're drawing attention to what's gone wrong.
What's not working.
It's like a mea culpa.
Maybe. I mean, it's acknowledging the fact that it's, and again, this is really interesting when it comes to the Back to the Future 2 Crispin Glover question. It's like if someone is just performing the actor, not the character, have they played the character?
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like the credits are reaffirming that everything we got from this didn't come from the guy who played him in this movie. It's all from Julian Beck. Again, why? But what? Then why Kane? Just
oh my god! Like that. That's what I mean. Like I can extend them all the sympathy in the world for having to deal with Heather O'Rourke's death in the middle of production, but.
Sure.
But Julian Beck died between the movies.
Already gone.
Yeah. So like, I don't give them an ounce of sympathy for having to recast somebody and put him in prosthetics. To me, it's like only marginally different than what they're doing now, which is like actually reanimating the dead in movies, which don't even fucking get me started on that.
You don't need to get started. It's already been covered extensively by many of my rants.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Director Gary Sherman designed the visual effects for this movie, which is interesting in that it's the strongest element of the movie by a mile.
Mm-hmm.
But also that, was he possibly more interested
in that
than
I really think
storytelling,
yes, absolutely,
directing actors? So, again, that's gains and losses. Part of me is like, I can't imagine this movie without those interesting visual effects, but it maybe means the director's got his eye off the ball. I can't believe the Heather O'Rourke tribute is buried at the bottom of the credits.
Right.
Like the same distaste that allows this movie to be released in the first place. Like they're almost kind of, we got away with it. Like, only the people who stayed to the end of the credits will get a sense there's anything wrong.
Oh man.
Like I don't know, like I just don't understand. I don't understand the thinking of like why you wouldn't put that front and center.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to avoid that it ever. I mean, it's like a child died. I mean, it's not like.
Yeah.
And Julian Beck died young, but he was an older man, and yet he's right at the top of the credits.
Fuck.
I don't know. But then, whoever thought you should trust Hollywood for good taste when it comes to Matt's point about reanimating the dead on screen? Clearly, it's just as mercenary as fuck. Put someone in a Donald Pleasant mask and send them out there. That's all I have.
Yeah.
That's the last of.
All right.
That's really all there is.
Well, that's it.
Our most depressing episode.
I was gonna
Yeah,
say
it really
this
was.
this is I'm wow, I'm bummed.
We're gonna come. This is gonna come with a warning. This is gonna come with a Samaritan's phone number. I think this episode. I think you need to put that in the show notes, Mike.
Maybe we can bring the mood up when we pitch our sequels next episode.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So you're gonna have to tell us what you think, everyone. What do you think of Poltergeist 3? Find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Send us an email to everythingsequel@gmail.com. For Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions and our special guest, screenwriter Matt Aldrich, I'm Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Say goodbye, Matt.
Goodbye.
Say goodbye, Tom.
Your choice, Tweedledum or Tweedledummer.
Perfect.
I'd love it if Tangina reclaimed Tweedledummer for the small people community.
I think
Like could be the N, the sort of in the reclaiming the N word for
Right.
African Americans to call each other.
I think this film should have been subtitled Tweedledummer. You should have been Poltergeist 3 Tweedledummer.
Tweedledummer. That's great.
The only other contender for I'll save it. I've still got quotables.
All right, fine. All right, everyone, stay tuned. Next episode, you'll be hearing our pitches. Until then.